So this is from a different point of view from yesterday's video, which was about biblical patriarchy and how that's actually the real biblical worldview. Today we're going to be talking about egalitarianism. I'm going to be calling it eagle, and people follow it eagles from now on because I don't feel like pronouncing it all the way. I'll be going more in depth into eagle and how cancerous it is. This is a supposed truth from our new liberalized society. This mishmashing of gender roles, which is seeped into the church. It doesn't abide by the principle that men are supposed to do X and women are supposed to do Y. Instead, now it's like, well, men and women can do X, and men and women can also do Y. Instead, that's what these equal churches do. They say they both can do these things. However, that's just not biblical. If you read the Bible, the New Testament or Old Testament, for at least 5 seconds, you realize that there's clearly defined roles for each gender. But that means there are gender roles. Now, if you look up the definition of sexist, what does that mean? Right? Well, discrimination across gender. And if you read closely into it, it's like, well, it's closely linked to gender roles. So this whole the idea of gender roles has now become sexist. Now it's taboo to say that men can only do certain things and women men are supposed to do certain things and women are supposed to do certain things as well. This new liberalized society has turned it into a sexist idea. And these Christians who espout this thing are following society rather than the values portrayed in the Bible. And at that point, can you really be a Christian? Are you really a Christian if you're following society as opposed to the Bible? The Bible tells us society is going to be wicked. Society is demonic. Yet all of these egalitarian Christians, follow it. And really, it's actually pride, because it's really funny. I told the story about how I became the enemy of my church. And one of the things because I asked the lead pastor about the verses a verse that essentially says, well, it's a disgrace for a woman to speak in the church. I asked him about the verse very nicely, and he started going on a tirade on me. And he started talking about my pride, how pride is going to be my downfall. I'm too prideful for asking this question. And what's insinuated is that my pride is hurt from me hearing from a woman speaking in the church. Some variation of that. Now, what's funny is, what I'm doing is just reading the Bible and expounding it. What's actually is happening here is someone is reading the Bible and they're using their own pride to say, well, now it's not like that anymore. It's not like that anymore because that feels wrong. It feels wrong that women are supposed to only do certain things, only men can do certain things. That's wrong. That feels wrong. But that's actually pride, because that's what you feel. That's not what's said in the text at all. So all of these Christians, because these are the Christians who do soapbox Christianity, which I'll make a video about, they're like, well, you got to be nice, you got to be this, you got to be this, and the third, up to an unrealistic extent. They don't even believe what they're saying, but they're just saying it because it sounds good. They talk about pride so much, yet believing that things are changed now because society has changed, It doesn't feel right for women to only be able to do certain things and men to be able to do certain things. That in itself is pride, which is really funny. So, if you want some verses, you can look at 1 Corinthians 14. You can look at Timothy, the first chapter, chapter 3, I believe. There's also a verse in there that says, I do not give woman authority over a man to teach. She's supposed to be quiet and learn in full submission. There's the qualifications for elders in Titus. And even if you look at Genesis 2, what's the story of Genesis 2? How was Eve created? Well, Adam was created first, and then the Lord wanted to find a helper for Adam. So remember, the animals were created for Adam. So they looked through all the animals, like, well, none of these are really qualified to be a helper. So then Eve, remember the circumstance here, Eve is created from Adam's rib for man as a helper. So remember the context. Adam was trying to find a helper. They couldn't find one, so they made Eve as the helper. So what about that? Wouldn't that in and of itself falsify this egalitarian idea? Doesn't Genesis 2, you open up the Bible, you're there within the first 3 minutes of reading. Eagle, or egalitarianism, I got used to saying it, so now I'm fine with saying it in full, is obviously not biblical. It's pushed by soy boy men and feminist demon women.